You all asked, so let's talk about it. Let's dive deeper into a case out of Oklahoma. It is Jesse McFadden. This is truly a just horrific case, and there were a lot of red flags along the way. And I want to talk about that and how parents can protect their kids as their kids go on sleepovers or as they have interactions, as people who are single parents try to date. Just wanted to point out what some warning signs are and ways to navigate situations like this to avoid tragedies like the one that happened in this case. So I have a video linked. A lot of the research that I got from this was from Anna Elise, 10 to Life. They did a phenomenal video covering a lot of this. I'm covering it from the psychological perspective. And there were a lot of signs. So I didn't meet with him. I can't diagnose him. That's my little disclaimer. There seemed to be some very clear sociopathic and narcissistic type traits, especially with right before this major incident and him deciding to do what he did. He messaged a victim that he had an upcoming court case for, saying that this was all her fault, despite the fact that he was the one that was in jail and messaged a minor and had inappropriate interactions with a minor. Those were his adult decisions. And because of that, I have no clue why they let him out of jail. That's what a lot of the victims in this case, they really don't understand why someone who should have, first of all, been registered and monitored. And I think he did have annual check ins, but that individual likely didn't know that he was living with a family with children. He was going to schools, they were having sleepovers with other people. It just seems like all of that wasn't fully known in the moment. And this is my side note that if I was single and dating, I would definitely Google a person. And if somebody said that they had this type of thing in their past, because it's my understanding that Jesse hired an actor that for his original crime that happened in 2003, that he had somebody pretend to be that victim, call his wife and say it didn't happen, and to pretty much negate what happened. My heart breaks for the stepfather in this case because they had an agreement that anyone that was in the children's life, anybody that was there, that there should have been a background check on the individual, and just a very cheap background check would have brought up not only his upcoming charges, but also his past charge. Now, I am all for individuals that do their time and they've been rehabilitated and they're re entering society, but there are certain crimes that legally, ethically, morally, I don't think that individuals should have access to children. Now, sometimes those individuals have their own biological children, that and that's where the courts work out what happens in those cases, but still, a registered offender, they are not allowed to go to their child's school, even if they are allowed to be around their child. There are certain restrictions that are there, and it's there to protect the community. Now, people will talk about the fact that there are individuals that are not registered, that are predators, and nobody knows it, and that you have to be mindful. And I don't say this to scare people. I just say this after just watching the Shiny People documentary, and then I also watched the Hillsong documentary. After just watching things like that, I think people just have to be aware, because I heard cases of children going to their parents and saying, "This is what happened," and the child not being believed, or them saying, "We don't wanna ruin the church," or, "We don't want to ruin," like, it's just, and as that individual, like, my heart just breaks for that survivor in that moment. In my clinical work, when I work with somebody that does have a history of childhood, I do ask them how people found out, if anybody did find out. So if they did tell, what was that process like for them? Because for some people, that was a traumatic experience that brought on additional trauma of not being believed or having to apologize to their perpetrator for what happened. And so I think being able to just keep your eyes open, because what's most important is keeping our kids safe. Now, there is a great book called Trauma Proofing Your Kids by Peter Levine, because I cannot protect my child from everything. I just can't. But a situation like this, I do feel could have been avoidable if there had been some follow-up. I did see in this case, so Jesse McFadden's old cellmate came forward and did some interviews and said that he was in contact with Holly, Jesse McFadden's wife. They were married for about a year before this incident happened. I thought it was interesting that the marriage was a bit of a secret and that certain family members weren't fully aware that they were married. And who knows what happened in that home before that night, but definitely there was a lot of tragedy the night of the incident and when everybody found everything that next morning. A part of me thinks, because a lot of times we wanna know why. We wanna try to, like, we're trying to understand something that is incredibly horrific and incredibly tragic, and I think he just didn't wanna go back to jail, and he supposedly, I saw a report where he had talked to his mother about having certain thoughts. Now, what can happen with an individual that is narcissistic or has antisocial personality traits is depression can come on when they are faced with their consequences of their actions. That is when they can sometimes become a danger to themselves and others. When I'm working with people that are in volatile situations, we often talk about safety and how can they safely get out if they are at a place where they can and where they're ready to do that. I also wonder if his wife didn't know that there was a court case coming up for his behavior when he was in prison. I think that would have been harder to, because it would, like, they found the phone on him and like this was clearly something that he did, and I think that one was going to be harder to undo. And sometimes individuals that are narcissistic, that do have those types of traits, they don't want anyone to see them negatively. They don't want the person's view of them to change, and they go to extreme measures to try to protect that. And this was just incredibly, I can't say sad and tragic enough, because this was just very, very tough. And thank you to the subscriber and I believe channel member that asked me to cover this, because I hadn't heard of this case. It's out of Henryetta, Oklahoma, and that community has forever been changed because it not only impacted Holly and her 3 children, it also impacted the 2 friends that were there that night. Their families were disappointed with the response because they really didn't feel like things were taken seriously, and because it was that they knew who did it and who did it was no longer around, that they really didn't look into the devices that were found and all of the other, because I guess one of the parents found their daughter's cell phone and they really believed, because there was a weird message that was sent the night before and they thought that Jesse likely sent that message. The fact that everything was staged the way it was, like there are really troubling things in this case. But like I said, in talking about how we can learn from a situation like this, how we can now apply, okay, so if my child is going over to somebody's house and if something doesn't seem quite right, that they can message me. So have a secret code where your child texts you, I forgot my pajamas, or they text you, like, y'all agree, they text you, "What's for dinner?" Like, y'all develop a secret code that, if you get this message, you need to create a pretend emergency and you need to go and get them. They're in a situation that's not safe. And that could be if they go out with friends and their friend has not been making good choices and they wanna come home, that there can be this no questions asked, like, I'm gonna come and get you. Your safety is what's most important to me. I think having some type of code like that with your children, I think that can be really important, because I remember growing up overhearing some things that my mom didn't know, and I didn't tell my mom because I wanted to still be able to go visit a friend. Like, I didn't want, because I knew my mom wouldn't be okay with it, and so I didn't tell her. But my mom didn't know that I was being exposed to, like, significant conflict, and those things can have an impact on kids. And as a parent, now, like I said, I can't protect my kid from absolutely everything, but I would. So if my child was going to sleep over at somebody's house, I would meet the parents. I would walk inside. "Oh, hey." Like, I'm nosy. I just am, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the fact that I'm nosy. I like, this is my child, and my child is gonna be sleeping here. I just wanna take a look around. Now, I would find a way to say that that wasn't so, like, I wanna take a look around, but, like, "Oh," like, because most families would offer a tour, because some of the parents, they weren't aware that the house was in the condition that it was in, and because I think the family trusted the friend, but weren't aware that there was a new person in the household. There was a new person in their life. And I'll be honest, because of the work I do, my child will probably have sleepovers at our house if they have sleepovers. Like, I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. Um, I am careful with those things because I do work with individuals that have experienced a lot. But saying that my child is never ever gonna go to a sleepover, that doesn't guarantee my child's safety, and so that's where I do think making sure that I teach my child that their body is theirs and that nobody has the right to touch them in a way that doesn't feel right, that feels weird, or that they're not okay with, or that's not appropriate for their age and stage. And so being able to have those conversations early. There is a great book, and I'm going to go grab it. I have this one in my Amazon store, but it is Let's Talk About Body Boundaries, Consent, and Respect. And I've actually used this book with some older kids too. There's probably a version of somebody reading it on YouTube if you wanted to check it out before purchasing it. But within it, they also talk about that babies. So, how can you tell if somebody isn't comfortable with touch? And there are just a lot of the book. I like books that have diverse pictures, and it talks about ways to set boundaries with people, and how we all have our space, and that there are these different types of boundaries. Because something that was really troubling in watching the Shiny People documentary was how some people raised with that blind obedience and this instinctual authority's always right, never ever question authority. People raised in those types of settings, that they sometimes have a higher risk of encountering trauma down the road, because they won't, like, they just, if something isn't okay, they don't know the words. Nobody's taught them how to handle situations like that, because what comes naturally might be to just, "This is weird. This wasn't okay," and then and any person is just going to survive that situation as best they can. I just want, if something happens, I want my child to come and tell me as soon as possible so we can address it. That no matter what, I wanna be there to support my child, for that they know they don't have to go through those things all by themselves, that they have a parent, that they have parents, that they have family, they have teachers, they have supportive people within their circle, that if something isn't okay, that we will make sure that they're safe. And I do think that in this situation, incredibly horrific, incredibly tragic, and I also think that there were parts of it that could have been, now he still might have done something along the way, but there were things in place that should have protected the kids. So it's my understanding that the stepfather and mom, and I think he was the father, I think, of one of the kids, and he was going through the process to adopt two of the children that he had been with since they were very young, that they had a rule that there had to be a background check. And Holly lied. that she lied and said that she had got a background check, but she hadn't. And that's where you can't let love blind you. So, in the midst of love, I don't believe that love should be blind. I think you should go in clear headed. I think that sometimes we don't make great decisions if it is all heart. I think there should be a balance of head and heart, that I should go in mindful, not like too rigid or too like if they don't have all of these things, or not too rigid, but there were some clear red flags, I think. And not to, because I don't know Holly's situation. I don't know what was said to her. Unfortunately, she's not able to tell her side of the story. And I do think with what we have, with what we do know, there are some things that could have been done different, that could have potentially helped protect her and the kids. But I've known people that have chosen a partner over their kids, that they've done what was best for them and kind of ignored the fact that this person was not a good fit for their family and was not a good fit for their kids, and might have potentially been a risk. I work with DSS cases. There are times where a situation happens and DSS says, like, "Hey, this is like you can either break up and not have the children around this person, or at least not have the children around this person that we've deemed to be unsafe." And there's some people that decide that they will not leave that other person. And I think that's where what's called codependence. And that's where I feel like I can't survive. I can't be alone. I don't want to be alone again. Like I need this person. That sometimes there can be these unhealthy bonds that form. And we were made to be interdependent, but codependence can sometimes open the door for things that aren't safe. There's a really old book by Melody Battle, Codependent No More. There are lots of more updated codependence books. I do have a list of resources. I'm pretty sure this one is in the parenting section, and then I have some in the self-help section. There are also some about recovering from past narcissistic relationships, or relationships that were toxic or unhealthy. And I'm excited. I'm currently in the midst of scheduling with another creator here on YouTube, where we'll be able to do a joint live about her new book that'll be coming out. And it's all about healing from toxic relationships, because sometimes a person can lose themselves in the midst of a relationship. And I don't think that's healthy. Totally losing yourself and giving up but not in a healthy way. 'Cause sometimes there are healthy adjustments and changes, but then there are times where for the sake of the relationship, people are putting their own emotions, their own safety, their kids, they're putting everything else at risk, and I don't think that's healthy. So I pre-recorded this one so that I can run it through to make sure everything clears. I've had some things get flagged when I talk about these things live. If you do have comments or questions, please let me know. And we can either follow up with another live video, or I might answer with a short if there are any specific questions. And if there's content that you would like to see, let me know. I have a long content list and I don't mind adding things on there, because I don't know if y'all have noticed type of creator I am is I do what I want, but I also like what y'all respond to and what y'all ask for. But when I have an idea, I don't know what I want to do. So I throw up some options for you all. And typically I will work through all of those options eventually, but often some of those pop up to the top as, okay, yes, I definitely see where this idea can go. And we go from there. On Thursday, we're going to be going live at 10 a.m. with my mom, the podcast. We're going to be recording our Legacy Moments podcast to talk about grief. And we're talking about grief from losing jobs, losing relationships, maybe feeling estranged from family. It's going to be a very broad topic. And if y'all have questions, please bring those. If you follow up on replay, you can always ask and we can follow up. We record that once a month, and this will be our June recording. That's all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.